The elderly man was invited to attend his friend's funeral, but heard his friend's son say he was holding a joyful funeral. He said the old man had not experienced illness or suffering before he passed away, lived steadily, and left with peace of mind, and that's called a joyful funeral. This is nonsense. He said this, and he wasn't afraid of being struck by lightning. These words instantly ignited the old man's anger. The elderly man, named Chang Weijia, had witnessed firsthand how this old friend walked hand in hand with his wife to the end of his life amid extreme pain and despair. At this moment, his old friend's children were hiding the tragedy. They pretended it was a show to showcase their filial piety. Chang Weijia could no longer tolerate this utter hypocrisy. In front of all the guests, he harshly scolded his friend's son. "Do you think it was an accident? Your parents are saving face for you." He was furious. He swung his long whip and smashed the seemingly righteous funeral to pieces. The sharp crack of the whip also pulled back the curtain of the past. Lao Chang recalled his first meeting with this old friend, which was precisely because of this whip. That day, Lao Chang was strolling in the park and saw a man and a woman collecting scrap being chased away by park managers, complaining that they affected the city's appearance. Everyone around sympathized with the scrap collector and criticized the administrator for being inconsiderate, but only old Chang sided with the administrator. He spoke sharply to the man collecting scraps, saying, "The park is a place for everyone to exercise. It's not for you to set up stalls here collecting scrap." Old Chang even said, "Why not just learn from a dog? Come pee here, and this place will be yours." This remark instantly made the woman angry, and she directly pushed old Chang away. Lao Chang was unwilling to engage with women. He then took out the whip he carried with him. While swinging his whip, he recited a mantra. "Qilan whip, protect the good, punish evil, and promote good, spread fame far and wide." The first 3 lashes are for being unrighteous and arrogant, with profit at the forefront and losing conscience. Repeatedly whipping the heartless, unfilial son, who grew up to forget his parents. 3 more lashes. Before the last 3 lashes could be unleashed, the woman stopped him without regard for the danger. During the argument, the jade bracelet on the woman's wrist was knocked down and shattered. In the end, after the caretaker's persuasion, the woman angrily took the recyclables and left. At that time, old Chang would never have imagined he had provoked someone whose fate would one day be closely tied to his. And he never imagined that the man who collected scrap would become his close friend who would whip and cause havoc at the funeral hall. A sudden turn of fate came quickly. After returning home, his daughter assigned him a task. She contacted a famous opera dance teacher, Teacher Chiu, and asked Lao Chang to take his grandson to apprenticeship. Old Chang muttered to himself, not understanding why the child insisted on learning opera. His daughter gave a straightforward reason. The status of intangible cultural heritage holders is special. In the future, all the major schools will compete to recruit him, which will greatly benefit the child's future development. Although old Chang had doubts, he couldn't argue with his daughter, so he brought his grandson to the teacher's doorstep. But as soon as the door opened, he was stunned. The one opening it was none other than anyone else. It was the woman he had just annoyed in the park that morning. Old Chang braced himself and entered, feeling as nervous as a little rabbit, afraid that his actions during the day would affect his grandson's apprenticeship. Fortunately, the woman was just Teacher Chiu's nanny, which made old Chang breathe a little easier. To ease his nerves, Lao Chang took a bottle of wine out of his pocket and took a sip. However, Teacher Chiu refused to accept his grandson as a disciple and even said directly, "I don't think he's up to the point at all." As soon as he heard his grandson didn't need to learn, old Chang immediately became assertive again and retorted to Teacher Chiu, "If a person could be born able to perform opera, who would still be a master? If you want to teach, we're not learning yet." After saying that, old Chang pulled his grandson and walked out. But as soon as he drove away, the woman immediately chased after him. It turned out she had just seen old Chang drinking inside and wanted to report him for drunk driving, avenging the park's revenge. Relying on her familiarity with the terrain, she took a shortcut to the intersection that Lao Chang always took and reported it directly to the traffic police. When Lao Chang drove over, he was stopped by traffic police for air testing. But the result was unexpected. The alcohol test result was 0. The woman didn't believe him and insisted that he had a bottle of liquor in his bag, which she saw with her own eyes. Who would have thought that old Chang's woman had switched to water, washed the bottle several times, and the smell of alcohol was gone? Just to satisfy him. She failed to report and was instead punished. Li Huiru was so angry she turned to leave, but old Chang stopped her and mocked her for a while. Old Chang originally wanted to scare her, but the distance between them instantly shrank, and the atmosphere became a bit tense. This scene was witnessed by his grandson in the car. Old Chang could only awkwardly make a heart gesture to his grandson, trying to ease the predicament. She thought the matter would be settled, but her daughter's phone call came in chasing. It turned out that teacher Chio had suffered psychological trauma in his early years and was withdrawn. Apart from his personal nanny, he rarely communicated with others. To ensure his grandson could successfully become a disciple, his daughter had already pulled strings to require old Chong to take his grandson there again the next day. For the sake of his grandson's future, Lao Chong had no choice but to grit his teeth and visit again. This time, Li Huiru directly blocked the door and told him that teacher Chio was ill and could not see guests. She told him to come another day. Lao Chong left his phone number on the old cardboard and asked her to contact him once teacher Chio recovered. But Li Huiru had no intention of helping him and turned around, tossing the cardboard aside. Old Xiang was both angry and helpless. At that moment, he noticed the hallway piled high with scrap and nearby fire safety warning signs. His eyes darted around, and he came up with a bad idea. That night, the fire department called old Chong to come pick him up. It turned out Li Huiru's phone was broken, and she couldn't find an emergency contact. She took out the number Lao Chong had left on the cardboard. Lao Chong helped her pay the fine, but when the staff were handling the paperwork, they noticed something was off. Why is this phone number the same as the complainant's? After the truth came out, the trace of gratitude Li Huiru had just felt instantly turned into anger. After leaving, she suppressed her anger and told old Chong that she would pay him back in the future. Old Chong looked completely unconcerned and said, "This amount of money is nothing." This statement completely ignited Li Huiru's grievance and anger. She said excitedly, "I left the scrap in the hallway. Do you think I don't know how ugly I am? Brother Sean helped me collect scrap from the park, which was also helping me out. You're so impressive." A few lashes drove him away. "I have nowhere to deal with the scrap now, so I can only leave it in the hallway. You think money doesn't matter, but have you ever thought about how hard life is for others?" Li Huiru's words were like a heavy hammer waking old Chong up. For the first time, he truly felt the trouble and harm caused by his lofty words and actions to others. He didn't know how to express his guilt, so he could only quietly carry the scrap Li Huiru had accumulated and load it into his own cart. He insisted on taking her to the recycling station. He drove with Li Huiru to find Brother Sean, who collected scrap. Seeing Brother Sean and Li Huiru yielding to each other, they only wanted a little money from selling scrap, and old Chang's guilt deepened. At that moment, Brother Shan's wife stood tremblingly on the table, trying to get some food. Old Chong was about to help, but unexpectedly saw the woman's pants fall off. He hurriedly turned to avoid her. In that brief moment of hesitation, the woman fell. Brother Shan and Li Huiru hurriedly helped her up. Only then did old Chong notice Brother Shan's wife looked dazed, singing nursery rhymes like an innocent child. Brother Shan felt sorry for his wife and blamed old Chong for not helping her up just now. Lao Chong explained that he didn't know she was sick. Brother Shan got angry and said, "You're the one who's sick. Grab a whip and beat people everywhere." Li Huiru spoke up, stopping Brother Shan from losing his temper. Although the atmosphere eased a bit, Brother Shan still warned Li Huiru to be careful of old Chong, saying he might actually be a bad person. Lao Chong knew his faults and reasons. After silently seeing Li Huiru home, he drove away. When he got home, Lao Chong found his son and daughter-in-law had arrived. They're here to pick up the kids and take them home. Lao Chang's granddaughter has a childhood sweetheart boyfriend. She wants to go abroad to find him, but her parents firmly oppose. In a fit of anger, she moved in with her grandfather. Besides working, the granddaughter also works part-time as a social media creator, and Lao Chong happily helps her shoot videos every day. One day, while helping his granddaughter record a video, he saw a familiar figure. It was Shanji's wife, who suffered from dementia. She sat alone by the roadside, clearly lost. Lao Chong hurried over to try to communicate, but she couldn't communicate at all. Old Chong hurriedly found the intermediary. He got Li Huiru's phone number. As soon as he hung up, Lao Chong noticed that Brother Shan's wife had wet her pants. Without hesitation, he ran into a women's lingerie store and, blushing, bought her a new set of lingerie. After Brother Shan's wife finished changing, she saw old Chang's grandson and suddenly rushed over with emotion, muttering words about letting down her children, as if instantly transported to a painful past, breaking down in tears. Lao Chong looked at it with deep sorrow. He couldn't help but think of his late wife. He patiently soothed her emotions and stayed with her to wait in the park. Afraid she might catch a cold, Lao Chong even took off his own shoes for her to wear. After waiting a long time, Brother Shan and Huiru finally hurried over. Brother Shan felt deeply guilty. He repeatedly apologized to old Chong, feeling that his family's affairs had troubled outsiders. He tearfully complained that he hadn't locked the door properly, which was why his wife escaped. He cried bitterly while apologizing to his confused wife, then pulled her tightly into his arms. Two elderly men with white hair. The scene of them embracing and crying on the street deeply shocked Lao Chong and Huiru present. Brother Shan carefully took off Lao Chang's shoes for his wife, thanked her again, then carried her on his back and staggered home step by step. Old Chang watched the two figures who depended on each other gradually fading into the distance. An unprecedented ripple stirred in his heart. Seeing that Huiru hadn't left yet, Old Chang invited her to take a walk around the nearby zoo. This zoo is where he used to work. The two strolled through the garden, and Lao Chang pointed at the monkey to introduce it to Huiru. His names were all strange and unusual, making Huiru laugh. Can't you change your name to something nicer? Yes, the bud on top is especially red. Call it Fizi Xiao. Huiru saw a monkey staring at a bottle, examining it closely. It seemed to be estimating its value, its expression exactly the same as when it picked up scrap. Old Xiang kindly suggested that if her life was tight, she could ask Teacher Chiu for a race. Huiru smiled slightly and revealed the truth. She was not Teacher Chiu's nan. She has been his tenant for decades. When she fell on hard times, it was Teacher Chiu who helped her. All these years, her care was just to repay a favor. Because she had to take care of the eccentric Teacher Chiu, she couldn't find a proper job. Her time collecting scrap was fragmented and close to home. This became her only option. Her more than 20 years of unwavering dedication earned Lao Chang's deep respect. The two walked to the elephant park. As usual, Old Chang opened his phone and recorded the elephant, sighing. Every time we meet, it's one less. Do they miss home? You might not remember your home. After being here for so long, everyone who raised it has left. Old Chang couldn't help but mention his late wife, saying she was small and walked as slowly as a snail. Huiru sensed the deep longing in his words and comforted him softly. She revealed the loneliness Lao Chang felt after losing his wife. Old Chang wanted to joke and lighten the mood, but his smile froze instantly. Huiru's eyes, as if she could see through people's hearts, made him anxious and afraid to act rashly anymore. At that moment, the closing announcement sounded, and Huiru's phone was broken. She could only ask Old Chang for the time. Seeing it was getting late, she hurriedly ran away. Lao Chang gazed at her back, deep in thought. After returning home, Lao Chang immediately found his granddaughter and asked her to help buy a second-hand phone. But his granddaughter saw through his thoughts at a glance. Looks like it's meant to be a gift for female friends. Grandpa, keep it up. The next day, Brother Shan invited Lao Chang and Huiru over for a meal, and he thanked Lao Chang for his help before. At the dinner table, Old Chang formally apologized to Shan Ge for what happened in the park. Brother Shan's wife handed the food to Old Chang, who didn't mind at all and took it directly with his mouth. This natural respect made Shan Ge and his wife, as well as Huiru, feel deeply warm. At that moment, Brother Shan's youngest daughter suddenly came to visit, and he hurried out. Huiru said that as soon as this little girl arrived, Brother Shan's wallet would definitely be emptied. It turned out that Brother Shan's daughter fell ill as a child, and the couple was laid off. Without money for timely treatment, she lost hearing in one ear and eventually married a gambler. The elderly couple felt guilty for it all their lives, so every time his daughter came to ask for money, Brother Shan would give it to him. But because of this favoritism toward his youngest daughter, his two sons had strong objections and rarely came home. Lao Chang watched as Shan's daughter took the money and turned to leave, and couldn't help but sigh. We're all at the doorstep. Why don't you come in to see Mom? After dinner, Old Chang drove Huira home. When they parted, he slipped her an envelope, saying it was a piece of scrap someone had thrown and had been specially picked up for her. Then he quickly drove away to avoid embarrassment. Huiru went home and opened the envelope, revealing a mobile phone inside. There was also a note with contact information. This was specially prepared by Lao Chang for her. Huiru held her phone and couldn't help but laugh. Lao Chang, who was secretly observing in the corner, saw her smile and smiled happily. The next day, Lao Chang sent his grandson to visit Teacher Chiu. Huiru noticed that the stitches on his pant legs were unused and pinned in a pin, so she took the initiative to help him mend them. Huiru from the mending room also recounted her own past. When she was young, she followed her childhood sweetheart to the city, where the man fell ill and passed away. When she was at her wit's end, it was Teacher Chiu who took her in. Since then, she has never married and remains single to this day. Soon, the pant legs were sewn with fine and neat stitches. To express his gratitude, Lao Chang took the initiative to help Huiru deliver the accumulated scrap to Shan Ge. He tied up the scrap item, happily glanced at his pant leg, and instinctively glanced upstairs, startling Huiru upstairs into quickly dodging. The two understood each other without words, and a subtle affection spread through the air. Old Chang drove a tricycle, carrying scrap. He sped along the road with ease. The sun and breeze are just right. Although the pile of scrap ended up selling for only 11 yuan, which wasn't enough for his fuel expenses, Old Chang felt happier than ever before. Soon after, his little grandson officially became a disciple, and everyone was delighted. Since then, Old Chang has cared especially about scrap materials, leaving all the bottles and cardboard boxes he could free up at home for Huiru. One day, he brought his grandson to class and found that teacher Chiu was gloomy and hadn't even eaten breakfast. After asking Huiru, she learned that teacher Chiu's beloved bird had fallen ill. Old Chang immediately ran to the park and invited an old friend who was skilled in bird care. His friend quickly cured the bird and was pleasantly surprised to find that the bird's owner was none other than Chiu, the famous opera Dan role he had admired for a long time. He learned that Lao Chang had this connection. His friend wanted to invite teacher Chiu to attend his grandson's farewell banquet for his grandson's departure. Lao Chang shared this idea with Huiru, but Huiru sent a message saying teacher Chiu was unwilling to go and only asked him to bring a pictorial. Old Chang took this opportunity to bring Huiru along to attend a gathering. Huiru was by his side. Old Chang was especially happy. However, halfway through the banquet, my friend's son sent everyone a document, instantly freezing the atmosphere at the table. Old Chang picked up the document and began to read aloud. It was a banquet liability waiver agreement. No solicitation to drink in any form, no driving after drinking, no fighting. Any illness or accident caused by drinking is not the responsibility of the banquet organizer. My friend's son explained with a smile, saying his law firm takes on many such cases each year, signing this one to avoid disputes, and said Old Chang would definitely understand. Old Chang couldn't help but laugh after hearing this, mentioning the incident of sending him to school years ago. Now that he had studied law, he was using clauses to guard against elders. At this point, Old Chang was already feeling displeased, but he could hold it in and smile, saying that these elderly folks were long past the age of competing to persuade others to drink. But his friend's son suddenly changed the subject and started the physical exam. Some elderly people never get checked. Their health status depends entirely on their own assessment. Just tell my dad. His arteries are already 60% blocked, and he has no idea about it. That whole drinking session ended up with a stroke. Wasn't Aunt May the same back then? By the time they were discovered, it was already in the late stage. These words were like a sharp knife, instantly stabbing at Old Chang's old wound that had been buried for 10 years. He suppressed his anger, took the white liquor, and filled it for himself. Then he drank it all in one gulp, and continued, word by word. I solemnly promise. This drink I drank voluntarily. If I die, it's my own business. It has nothing to do with anyone else. After saying this, Old Chang forced himself to stand up and leave the seat. Everyone came to persuade him, but only Huiru silently supported him. She helped him out of the banquet hall. After vomiting under the tree, Old Chang slumped by the stone. Fueled by alcohol, he finally confided to Huiru the pain and guilt that had been buried in his heart for 10 years. It turned out his wife had passed away from stomach cancer. The doctor said she had experienced hundreds of levels of pain, but Old Chang never once noticed. Thinking of this, a wave of guilt completely overwhelmed him. He felt that someone like him didn't deserve to be loved, so he used hurtful words to drive Huiru away. Are you interested in me? I'm someone who only cares about myself. What do you see in me? I'm giving you a broken phone and selling some scrap for you. Isn't that just to make you take better care of my grandson? You're not leaving yet? Looks like you really want me. Is it my 4,000 plus pension or my 80 square meter 2-bedroom apartment? In fact, Old Chang didn't truly think Huiru was scheming, but rather that he couldn't face his own guilt. The debt he felt toward his late wife weighed down like a heavy boulder, making it hard to breathe. He couldn't believe he still had the right to love and be loved, so he could only push Huiru away in such an extreme way. He wanted to escape the feelings he both longed for and feared, but running away wouldn't solve the problem. He stared in the direction where Huiru had disappeared, feeling a tightness in his chest. At that moment, his phone suddenly rang. It was his granddaughter calling for help. On the phone, the granddaughter's voice was choked with tears, saying she had drunk too much at a bar because her parents firmly refused to let her go abroad to find her childhood sweetheart's boyfriend. Old Chang didn't have time to compose himself and rushed to the bar. He brought his granddaughter, who was drunk and unconscious, back home. After his granddaughter sobered up, Old Chang was about to rest, but unexpectedly, she told him, "No one blames you for Grandma's problem. It's you who put too much psychological pressure on yourself. Stop trying to please others. It's too tiring, so please yourself." This sentence struck Old Chang's weak spot like a thunderclap. He pretended to be calm on the surface, but as he turned and walked into the room, he couldn't hold back any longer and squatted down to cry loudly. The scene of his wife's death replayed in his mind over and over, and he finally realized the past 10 years. He had been living in self-punishment, and it was time to let himself go. Early the next morning, the daughter suddenly came to Old Chang's house, saying she wanted to bring her grandson home. Old Chang was confused, and after pressing further, he learned that it was teacher Chiu who had gotten into trouble. Recently, Avian flu was rampant. Staff from the sub-district office came to disinfect the birds, but Teacher Chiu treated the birds as if they were his own life, desperately protecting the little birds in the cage. Huiru also got into a conflict with the staff to help Teacher Chiu. In the end, not only did Teacher Chiu get so angry that he was hospitalized, but Huiru was also taken to the police station. When Lao Chong heard the news, his heart skipped a beat, and all his awkwardness were instantly replaced by worry. He hurried to the police station and bailed Huiru out on bail. He wanted to drive Huiru home, but Huiru just coldly said, "No need," and walked straight ahead. She was clearly still angry about what happened that night. Lao Chong watched her back, wanting to say something, but didn't know where to begin, so he could only stand there helplessly. After returning home, Old Chong glanced at the calendar and suddenly froze. Today happened to be Huiru's birthday. This discovery gave him an idea in an instant. That night, he knocked on Huiru's door. Huiru opened the door and saw it was him, her expression still cold. "Happy birthday. I never skip my birthday. Then just treat today as an apology day. I apologize for speaking so openly that night. You were telling the truth that day, and I hit you too. You know I was talking drunk. After drinking, I spoke the truth. I admit I really did yemo that day. Please forgive the nonsense of an old hyperthyroidist man. Stop saying things I don't understand. You just look down on me, a woman who scavenges scraps. I'm innocent. Listen to my explanation. I don't want to hear your explanation. I don't want you to look down on me. I'm not even good enough for you. I don't like you. Is it not okay if I like you?" Huiru froze instantly, her eyes wide open. She clearly hadn't expected Old Chong to suddenly confess. She had lived most of her life and had never been so openly expressed in love, and she was long used to bearing everything alone. This sudden deep affection, it left her both delighted and flustered, even finding it hard to believe. Lao Chong watched her reaction, feeling both nervous and expectant, and continued, "I'm not a perfect person. In fact, I'm pretty bad in some ways. But if you say I look down on you, you're really wronging me. Otherwise, I'll come to you early this morning to learn the art and follow my master in picking up bottles and wander the world." After saying this, Old Chong himself smiled awkwardly, while Huiru shyly wiped away her tears. Lao Chong knew he had succeeded. He then took out a carefully prepared new bracelet and put it on Huiru. Huiru didn't dodge, letting him slip the bracelet onto her wrist. The cold jade bracelet pressed against her skin, yet it made her feel warm inside. This time, she didn't refuse again, because she knew she had long fallen in love with this tough-talking old man with a soft heart. Early the next morning, Lao Chong arrived downstairs at Huiru's house. He kept honking the car horn. Huiru opened the window and saw Old Chong smiling at her, and the original emblem on the front of the car was also there. It was replaced with a dedicated recyclables service. From that day on, Old Chang's car always had several bags for scrap. He drove with Huiru, weaving through the streets and alleys of the city, stopping to pick up empty bottles whenever he saw them. During breaks, he would use the scrap he found to make small toys for Huiru. When tired, he would sit by the roadside and massage Huiru's feet to relieve fatigue. They also played murder mystery games like young people, taking on different roles in the game. During those days, the sunlight always seemed especially warm. The wind carries a sweet scent. The two seemed to return to their youth, without the burdens of life, without past regrets, only the joy of being together. But happy days are always short-lived. That day, Old Chong and Huiru went to the scrap station to deliver scrap as usual. Brother Shan suddenly asked Old Chong how to send scheduled messages. Old Chong didn't think much of it, and patiently taught him the method. At that moment, Huiru suddenly noticed that Shan Ji's wife's pants were covered in blood. They quickly took Brother Shan's wife to the hospital. Old Chong and Huiru waited anxiously outside the hospital. While waiting, she saw an elderly man walking a mannequin for a walk. Huiru told Lao Chong that the old man and Teacher Chiu were childhood sweethearts. They had been together when they were young due to family opposition, and as a result, the other never married. The other remained unmarried all their lives. The old man never figured it out and couldn't let go, which led to the situation he is now. Old Chong and Huiru watched the old man's lonely back, feeling uneasy inside. They recalled their own experiences and the difficulties faced by Shan Gu and his wife, suddenly realizing they could meet again in their later years. It was already a tremendous blessing. But when they thought of parting and death, both fell silent again. They had all experienced the pain of losing a loved one, and neither wanted to endure it again. Not long after, Brother Shan helped his wife out of the hospital, and Lao Chong and Huiru hurried over to ask about the situation. But Brother Shan forced himself to stay calm, saying it was a minor issue, and that some medicine would be enough. On the way back, Brother Shan suddenly said he wanted Lao Chong to take them to the zoo once. Old Chong didn't think much of it, and agreed right away. Arriving at the zoo, they walked straight to the elephant's enclosure. Looking at the massive elephant, Brother Shan couldn't help but sigh with Lao Chong. I've heard that when an elephant gets old, it knows when it will die. Hey, they walk into the woods and quietly die in a hidden place. That place is called the Elephant Tomb, and it is also the final resting place for the elephants. After hearing Old Chang's words, Brother Shan's expression grew somewhat complicated. Neither Huiru nor Old Chang noticed that Brother Shan had already made a heavy decision in his heart. The next day, Brother Shan invited the whole family over for a meal. Such a gathering hadn't been held in years, and he had invited Lao Chong and Huiru. But from the very beginning, the meal was suffocatingly oppressive. Before the meal, Brother Shan wanted to say something to his family, but at the dinner table, no one was paying attention to what he was saying. The eldest son kept looking at his phone, busily working, while the grandson complained he was hungry and needed to eat. Only Shan's youngest daughter noticed her mother's expression was off, but her husband had been gambling on his phone since sitting down. After losing, he even loses his temper in public. To lighten the mood, Brother Shan took out gifts he had prepared long ago from his room and gave them to his grandchildren. These were small toys he had made himself in his spare time. Although not expensive, they were full of thoughtfulness. But the daughter-in-law found the toys dirty, spraying disinfectant continuously on top. Old Chang watched this scene, angry several times, wanting to lose his temper, but Huiru stopped him each time. After all, this was Brother Shan's family dinner, and as outsiders, they couldn't get involved. To lighten the mood, Huiru had Brother Shan and Old Chang play some fist games. He came to feed Brother Shan's wife himself. But after just a few strokes, the daughter-in-law complained it was noisy and told them not to disturb the child's online classes. After the meal, no one cared about Brother Shan and his wife's well-being, nor did anyone ask about his wife's health. After finishing their meal, the children packed up and hurriedly left, leaving behind only two lonely elderly people and a mess on the table. Watching Brother Shan and his wife cuddle together, staring blankly in the direction the children left, Old Chang's chest felt as if something heavy was pressing down on him. Even his breathing became shallow. He suddenly felt that this table full of food was no family feast. It was clearly the perfunctory exchange between Shan Gu and his wife, with genuine sincerity, a transaction where the children used family affection as bargaining chips. They came to eat this meal. It's all just to get money from Brother Shan, to act filial in front of others. The remote-controlled cars discarded on the floor and toys left on the table silently tell the story of this family's indifference. The next day, Lao Chong and Huiru came to the hospital to visit Teacher Chiao. At that moment, his phone suddenly rang. It was a voice message sent by Brother Shan. Old Chong opened the voice message. Brother Shan's voice carried a hint of fatigue, but was unusually calm. Brother Chong, there's something I'd like to ask you to do for you, big brother. Thank you for teaching me to send messages regularly. By my calculation, by the time you receive this message, you'll be asleep forever. It turns out that after yesterday's family dinner, Brother Shan had already made up his mind. He calmly cleans the house, sweeping the floor, hanging clothes. Every action is done with utmost care, as if completing an important ritual. Under his wife's stunned gaze, he crushed the sleeping pills, carefully poured them into a bowl, then added water and stirred it evenly. He even took a sip of the water temperature to make sure it wasn't too hot, then unplugged the camera Lao Chong had given him earlier. In fact, Brother Shan's wife had long been diagnosed with late-stage colon cancer. These days, she had been enduring immense pain every day, unable to sleep at night. Sometimes, the pain was so intense that she suddenly snapped back to reality, clutching Brother Shan's hand and crying, begging him to take her away. Shan Gu loved his wife all his life. Watching his beloved suffer so much, his heart ached like a knife, yet he was powerless to help. In the end, he decided to accompany his wife, not letting her be lonely on the road to the underworld. He dipped a towel in warm water and carefully wiped his face and hands, his movements so gentle it seemed to care for a rare treasure. He recalled the elephant and elephant mound that Lao Chong mentioned. He felt it was a sign from heaven. So he moved the stove into the room, locked the door tightly, and sealed the corners of the door and window with yellow tape, sealing all the gaps. In his message to Old Chong, Shan Gu specifically explained he wanted Lao Chong to put away the tape, wanting the world to think they had left unexpectedly, and not to let his children be gossiped about because of his decisions. The walls of Brother Shan's house are covered with photos of his children growing up, but the people in these photos no one could open up to him. But even so, Brother Shan never blamed them and continued to think of them. He also left the documents from his truck with Old Chong, asking him to help scrap the truck. The old fellow has been with me for so long. They should also have a good home. Take the pair of clay figurines on the table and keep them as a keepsake. Consider this our blessing to you and Huiru. After making all the preparations, Brother Shan came to his wife and whispered, "If you do this, you'll never feel pain again. Ah, Lenny, if you're really gone, Do you just refuse to acknowledge it? Ha ha, I like you. His wife laughed happily and took the medicine bowl and swallowed it in big gulps. Brother Sean closed his eyes in pain. The two slowly pressed their foreheads together, saying their final goodbyes. After her beloved lies down, Brother Sean added charcoal to the stove. He heard that after death, people pass through a pitch-black, directionless realm. So he held his wife's hand and walked with her, so she wouldn't be lonely on the road to the underworld. In the last scheduled message, Sean Gu told Old Chong, "It's not that I'm that amazing, but that I really don't know how to survive without her. Don't be sad for us. This is not the end for us, but a rebirth. That way, we can be together forever." When Lao Chong and Huiru stumbled to Shan Ji's house, the room was already filled with the smell of gas. Old Chong hurriedly opened the window, but accidentally knocked over the clay figurine on the table. The clay figure fell to the ground, shattering into several pieces, just like his heart at that moment. Seeing the elderly couple lying on the bed without breathing, Huiru couldn't hold back any longer and broke down in tears. That crying was like a dull knife, repeatedly cutting through Old Chang's nerves. He suddenly remembered the loneliness in Shan's eyes when he told Brother Sean about the elephant mound. It turns out that at that time, Brother Sean already knew his wife couldn't hold on any longer. He didn't want to see his beloved suffer anymore, so he chose such a resolute path. Lao Chong knew that Brother Sean wasn't foolish. He loved him deeply, loving him so much that he was willing to give up everything. Including one's own life. But he couldn't help but feel sorry for Shan Ji and his wife, for not having lived many days of good life, for never getting a sincere greeting from their children, and for worrying that even when leaving, they had to think of their children and fear gossip. The passing of Shan Gu and his wife, it was like a huge stone pressing down on the hearts of Old Chong and Huiru. For the first time, they truly felt death so close to them, and how cruel the farewell was. Not long after, Teacher Chiu was sent to a sanatorium due to health reasons, and Huiru was living in the same house. Also, because the troupe needs to reclaim it, he can't continue living there. She began to think about returning to her hometown in the countryside because she was afraid of facing the pain of separation and death again. On the day of the burial, his children held a grand filial banquet, choosing the most luxurious hotel in the city. The table is filled with delicacies from both mountains and seas. But Lao Chong looked around and saw no sadness on anyone's face. Old Chong picked up his wine glass and quietly toasted to Brother Shan's portrait. Then he got up and prepared to leave. But at that moment, Brother Shan's son stood on stage and began delivering a eulogy into the microphone. "I believe that before the elderly passed away, they did not experience illness or suffering, lived steadily, and passed away peacefully. That is called a joyful funeral." "You're talking nonsense. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning when you say that?" "Uncle Chong, if we did anything wrong, please tell us privately. I want to say this in front of you leaders, VIPs, and friends and family. What is a joyful funeral? Not allowing you to serve them, not causing you trouble, is a joyful funeral? One day, if you kick your legs and your crematorium burns down, the restaurant will just set up a drink and be sent away? Uncle Chong, this is my parents' memorial banquet. How dare you talk about a filial banquet? Your parents have never eaten such a fancy meal in their lives. Do you think it was an accident? Your parents are saving face for you, child." The security guard nearby rushed forward to try to drag Old Chong away, but Old Chong was incredibly strong. He broke free from the guard's restraints, yanked off the Qilin whip at his waist, and swung it fiercely. He recited, "Qilin whip, protect the good, punish evil, and spread good, spread fame." The first 3 lashes are the ungrateful wolf who repays kindness with enmity, and the pursuit of profit leads to a loss of conscience. The last 3 lashes are heartless, and unfilial. Growing up and forgetting his parents. Still happy with funerals? I'll let you eat. The whip landed repeatedly on the table, and also on the hearts of everyone present. Old Chong swung harder and harder, until his arm was sore and he could no longer lift it, then stopped. Huiru stood to the side, tears streaming down her face. She understands Old Chang's anger, understands his helplessness. She understands even more the grievances of Brother Sean and his wife. Lao Chang walked over to the place hanging the joyful funeral couplet, raised his whip, and in a few swift moves, knocked down both the couplet and the microphone beside him. It wasn't until the piercing buzzing sounded in his ears that he slowly came back to his senses and stared at Brother Shan's photo. His voice was hoarse as he said, "Forgive me for ruining your morning banquet. This frustration is bottled up in my heart. If I don't express it, I feel bad. You've misjudged me." Old Chang turned his head menacingly, looking at the terrified guests retreating. He took a step forward. People take a step back. Only Huiru remained firmly standing in place, her eyes full of concern and understanding. Soon after, Old Chang was taken to the police station for causing a commotion at the memorial banquet. Fortunately, Old Chang's few lashes eventually woke up Brother Shan's children. As Old Chang walked out of the police station, they suddenly knelt down with a thud. Old Chang stood where he was, watching the scene before him, feeling no emotion at all. In fact, he found it somewhat laughable. He recalled that at Brother Shan's family banquet before, they were either busy answering phone calls. Some stared at their phones, some looked down on the elderly's handmade toys. At today's morning banquet, they spouted nonsense about joyful funerals, set up a lavish banquet, and showed not a trace of sadness on their faces. But now, kneeling here and speaking words of repentance, they truly realized their mistakes. Or was it because he caused a scene at the morning banquet and was afraid of being criticized? The more Old Chang thought about it, the more ironic it seemed. Kneeling here was too late, too cheap. After leaving behind the words, "You knelt to the wrong person," he turned and left. Days passed, and Huiru decided to return to the countryside. Lao Chang did not stop her. He knew the fear in Huiru's heart. The departure of Shan Gu and his wife was like a shadow, making her afraid to face any possible farewell. On the day of departure, Lao Chang drove her off, and the two barely spoke along the way. Only the silence in the carriage spoke of their reluctance to part. When they arrived at Huiru's hometown, Lao Chang helped her unload her luggage, feeling 1,000 things on his mind but not knowing how to begin. In the end, he couldn't help but ask, "Do you think we can meet again?" Huiru looked at him, her eyes reddened, but he said nothing. Old Chang understood immediately. He forced himself to hold back his sadness and turned to leave. After returning home, Lao Chang glued together the two broken clay figurines left by Brother Shan bit by bit. He looked at the clay figurines that had been glued together. He suddenly felt an emptiness in his heart. "We're so close. I'll call you Sister Wei. I wonder if you will have the chance to see this letter. Let everything be done as it will. Some things are hard to say, so I have to write them down." In the letter, Huiru said that the days she spent with Lao Chang were the happiest times of her life. She thought she had moved past the shadows of the past, but the departure of Shan Gu and his wife made her recall the pain of losing her childhood friend. She was afraid she would lose her lover again, afraid she couldn't withstand such a blow. After reading the letter, Lao Chang walked to the window. He suddenly pulled open the curtain that Teacher Chiu had been tightly shut. Behind the curtains, there is no scenery, only a cold, dead wall. At that moment, the sorrow in Old Chang's heart spread like a tide. This wall perfectly mirrored his current state of mind, clearly filled with concern for Huiru. Yet he was firmly trapped by the barriers built by reality and fear, with not a single gap for breath. Life returned to how it was before. Old Chang went to the park as usual to practice whip fighting, but after just a few swings, the park manager came over. He told him that whips are no longer allowed here. Old Chang silently put away the whip, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He instinctively picked up a bottle and threw it into the trash. At this moment, an elderly couple in twilight love had an argument over their children's opposition. The crowd was drawn over, leaving him alone. The speakers played the song he had hidden in his heart, "I Love You." Lao Chang couldn't help but dance to the melody, spinning and smiling, as if he had a dance partner. But with a single turn, a tremendous sorrow overwhelmed him like a tide. He suddenly fell ill and collapsed to the ground. When he opened his eyes again, he was already lying in a hospital bed. Her son stayed by the bedside, his eyes full of worry. Old Chang looked at his son, feeling a bit comforted. At least he was luckier than Brother Shan. Although his son was usually busy, he was still by her side at critical moments. But before he could say much more to his son took a call and walked away. Watching her son's hurried departing figure, a trace of bitterness rose in Old Chang's heart, but he didn't say much. He had long grown accustomed to his children's busy schedules and knew that even family members had their own matters and could never be with them all the time. After returning to the ward, Lao Chang opened his phone. He saw a message from his granddaughter. She had reunited with her boyfriend and was preparing to travel the world on a budget to pursue her own happiness. Looking at his granddaughter's message, old Chang smiled. If his granddaughter dares to risk everything for love, why can't he? Just then, a commotion suddenly came from the next ward. Old Chang stepped forward to take a look and realized it was Principal Chun, who had been Teacher Chio's childhood friend. Principal Chun suddenly sobered up and frantically searched for his beloved. Seeing the principal's painful expression, old Chang seemed to see his own future, perhaps also tormented to death by endless longing and loneliness. He woke up with a start, packed his luggage, and prepared to leave the hospital. The surgery could be postponed, but happiness couldn't wait. He didn't want to miss Huiru again. Meanwhile, Huiru was washing vegetables in her old hometown's yard when suddenly the familiar car horn came from outside. That was the rhythm Lao Chang would follow every time he came to see her. She walked out of the courtyard in surprise, and sure enough, old Chang had arrived. He threw down his luggage and said to Huiru, "Li Huiru, there's something you've misunderstood. Principal Chun isn't living so comfortably. That wooden figure doesn't get sick or die, but it also doesn't cry or laugh." Principal Chun suddenly woke up and felt so upset not being able to see his lover. "I've been awake every day and can't see you. Do you think I can endure this pain for many more days?" Our generation, we always keep the words we need to say in our hearts, afraid of awkwardness awkwardly. Today I'm going all out, whether it's awkward or not. Li Huiru, listen up. From now on, whether sick or healthy, rich or poor, I will never part from you until I swallow this pride. Li Huiru, I love you. Huiru looked at old Chang's sincere gaze and couldn't hold back any longer, tears streaming down her face. She threw herself into old Chang's arms, holding him tightly, as if to vent all her grievances and longing. Old Chang also held Huiru tightly, feeling her body heat. He felt an unprecedented sense of security. He finally found his own happiness, someone to face birth, aging, sickness, and death with. Lao Chang's story shows us that aging is not the end of life, but a race near the finish line. This is the sprint phase that requires the most courage and strength. True filial piety is not about a dignified funeral, but about the attentive companionship of parents while they are alive. True love is not just for the young, but a spark of life that can ignite two souls at any age.